Now, the US military has carried out another strike on a suspected drug vessel, this time in the Eastern Pacific. This is the 8th strike against an alleged drug vessel carried out by the Trump administration. The previous 7 have taken place in the Caribbean. Pete Hegseth said yesterday, at the direction of President Trump, the Department of War conducted a lethal strike on a vessel being operated by a designated terrorist organisation and conducting narco-trafficking in the Eastern Pacific. We've also heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He had this to say at the White House.
The question is, bottom line, these are drug boats. If people want to stop seeing drug boats blow up, stop sending drugs to the United States.
But does it matter if it's in the United States?
Well, these are all in international waters.
The boat. Could you do a strike in the United States, or if Northern
Well, that's a different matter. Now you're talking about a law enforcement matter. In this particular case, there are people traveling on international waters headed towards the United States with hostilities in mind, which includes flooding our country with dangerous, deadly drugs. And they're going to be stopped. And that's what's happening. And in the case last week, you saw there was a submarine. It was a submarine. It was a submersible. That's a drug boat all the way through. We know what these boats are. The president just said it. We track them from the very beginning. We know who's on them, who they are, where they're coming from, what they have on them. If you're running drug boats, you're in grave danger.
Esther, it's a pretty clear warning. If people want to stop seeing drug boats blown up, maybe stop sending drug boats to the United States.
Yeah, I mean, the legalities is one thing. Obviously, people will say we need evidence. You can't just blow up ships in international waters that you are alleging to bring drug boats. But I think in many ways, the American legal system and the whole kind of use of lawfare has effectively almost driven the Trump administration to do this. Now, we see other countries has quite strong deterrents against drug dealing and smuggling. You know, Singapore, for example, has the death penalty, and that is quite contentious in the US because while it is a federal penalty, it's not applicable in all states. So really the question is, what can the Trump administration do? Now, I must admit, blowing up submarine vessels in the middle of the ocean is quite cavalier. Many people would ask, why don't you get the Coast Guard to bring them into the country and arrest them and process them in the typical way? But then you also see, the Democrats crying murder over the fact that Donald Trump is deporting drug dealers and known criminals from the US. So even if he was supposed to go down the bipartisan route, will the Democrats, who seem quite keen on allowing individuals that shouldn't be in the US, would they act in the best interest of the American public and try and stop this flooding of drugs, including fentanyl, into the US? Or would they continue to play politics with people's lives? Now, whether this will be effective, and you'll see a significant decline in these kinds of methods being used to smuggle drugs into the US, only time will tell. But one cannot say that Donald Trump's administration is not taking this seriously.
Yeah, and he's putting America first. Now, Donald Trump has announced tough new sanctions on Russia's 2 biggest oil companies as frustrations grow over the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The president posted the sanctions list on social media and called on Russia to agree to an immediate ceasefire. Here is Donald Trump.
They're massive sanctions. It's sanctions on oil. The 2 biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil. And hopefully it'll push, hopefully he'll become reasonable, and hopefully Zelensky will be reasonable too. It takes 2 to tango, as they say, and we're going to find out. They hate each other. These 2 people hate each other. You know that better than anybody, and it makes it more difficult than it should be. This should be easier to do, but the level of hatred between Zelensky and Putin is very substantial.
Trump was also asked why he acted now, and he said, "I just felt like it was time. We waited a long time." Now, Trump has walked back his threat to use Tomahawk missiles, and he's tried to involve China by telling the media that Xi Jinping has the power to pressure Putin. Now, Esther, of course, negotiations over ending the war in Ukraine have stalled. Donald Trump put off a second planned summit with Putin in Budapest. So, Esther, I suppose these new sanctions are sending a signal that Donald Trump's patience with Putin is wearing thin, and he's really trying to ramp up the pressure here.
Yeah, and I think a sign that he's really kind of getting fed up with all of this, whatever Donald Trump looking fed up means, is that he's also put sanctions on India. So 25% sanctions on India, because India has been known to buy cheap Russian oil and gas and then sell it to international markets, to European markets, for example, at a hiked rate. I assume his next target will probably be China, which he didn't actually sanction. But I'm sure if he's very serious about this, we'll probably sanction in a few weeks. Now, he's also said that he hopes that this doesn't have to last very long, which is quite strange. When you sanction a country, you don't really want to tell them that you only want it to last a few weeks. You want the pressure to bite. But clearly, he is quite sick of what he thinks is Russia's stubbornness about concessions they want in the Donetsk region and insistence on the sort of land trade and keeping basically most of Russian-speaking eastern Ukraine as sovereign Russian territory, at the very least, a Russian satellite state. Trump has been kind of flip-flopping because on the one hand, he's been a few weeks ago, he promised Zelensky that he was going to entertain the idea of sending them Tomahawk missiles. On the other hand, he's now saying that Ukraine has to basically concede to Putin because they don't have a chance of winning this. And in all of this, the Europeans have just basically become the insurance policy for Ukraine. You've seen them ramping up a lot of their sort of military contributions and aid to Ukraine, which is basically their way of kind of securing their own borders. But clearly, Trump is showing that he is not afraid to put sanctions on not only Russia, but people that are benefiting from Russia's flooding the natural energy markets with cheap oil and gas.